Give you my last dollar for that Gucci sweater. Trade my soul for gold, Staying hard for plush leather. You know it's better when cold weather. Whether or not we dodge this poverty like Mayweather. See, it's cool. What's for your homies? Let me break your back in a second. What's for your homies? What's for your homies? What's for the homies? What's for the homies?
The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States government. Attacks by the undead have been reported in several states across the country.
Okay, cool. Well, welcome to the Purple Mic Podcast, Music and Civics. Boom, 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 boom. I got my boy, P. Pardon me. Yeah, he in the building. Come on now. Listen, I got to give a little bit of background on even like how I know Parish. We date all the way back to like college, marching band days, party days. We seen each other through the worst.
Yes.
To, like, who we are today is such a beautiful, beautiful like transformation. Parish is like a wonderful educator. One thing I love about this gentleman here is his mind and spirit, besides the fact of being hilarious and highly educated. He's an educator, guys. Yeah, so you want to tell us about anything?
Yeah. Well, one, that intro, I'm over here like, oh my God, you got me feeling so good. Well, what's up, Purple Mike family? Glad to be with y'all. Just like Alex said, we go all the way back to our Howard days, from college. And so kind of like she already said, like we have been through like the best of times and the worst of times together. And like this just feels like home to me. So I'm so glad just to be in this conversation. I am a educator by trade. So after graduating from Howard, I did move back home to Detroit, where I was a classroom teacher for 5 years. And then after leaving the classroom, I worked in higher education. And then now I am in private consulting, doing some DEI work or workforce transformation consulting. So like still all kind of tied to the same theme, but like on a larger scale. So super excited just to like see how all of my different experiences like come together in this conversation.
Okay. That's my boy right there, guys. I'm like super proud of Parish. That's why I'm still okay in him. He know the hype is real. So anyway, I do like in this conversation. Once again, I can't remember if I said it, but we're talking about preying on hope and passion. I want to first start the conversation with a little bit more personal questions. I know before, like in the previous episodes, they were more so like civic based, but I think in order for it to be healing, I have to pull from personal experiences a little bit more. Then we'll talk about everyday experiences in the workforce or whatever you're dealing with on a regular basis, and then also just civic stuff, like the huge meat of it. So my first question, oh, by the way, everybody know who I am, so we can just breeze past that. But anyway, first question would be, how have you seen people's hope or passion get used to lift them up or hold them back in school, work, or creative spaces? If I need to ask it again. Oh, okay.
Oh no, listen, that is a great question. And I think that it's such an interesting question too, because like it could come from like all different angles. I think it depends upon, and especially in like my experience, the environment where you're working or like showing that passion, and kind of like that being tied to the motivation of the people in charge of, I guess, like dictating how you can show that passion.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that when I was in education, it was very interesting because one, being a male in education, like you're already seen as like a unicorn. And then so I was a black male teacher. So I like that was even like less of a percentage. So in that space, I think it was easy for me to kind of like do the things that I was passionate about and like not necessarily feel like taken advantage of when I had to like go over and beyond, because I knew like my students really needed that, because I might have been the only one of me that they saw doing whatever things that we had to do at the time. But I definitely think that when you go and like you move out of these situations that are for like serving people, and then you move to you move to a space that is like geared towards serving profit, then they
Mm-hmm.
start to like weaponize like your passions and your strengths to kind of get the most labor out of you without giving you some of that value that you might have gotten from like serving the people while kind of doing work that was still hard. So I think it really just depends on like the setting that you're in, and if that passion that you're showing is going to be like value versus exploited.
Mm, that's a really good answer there. So,
And I
just to dig a little bit, because I'm just
mm,
curious to know,
yeah.
um, I guess name one healthy experience, something that was just a beautiful takeaway, and then probably the most like egregious for you, and like
Mm,
what was your determining factor in walking away, and then like kind of tell the people, I guess, that process emotionally for you.
yeah. Okay, for sure. So I know one time when I was working in higher education, and so I had just left the classroom, and so I was working in the higher ed space, and my role in that space, I was a program coordinator for this grant funded program that was geared toward like youth that were considered marginalized youth. And
Mm-hmm.
so, while being the program coordinator for that program, I noticed that like depending upon like which site students were at, they had a different experience. And I had a theory that their experience was dictated by the identity of who the site coordinator was. So
Mm.
if you had a black child in our program that was at a program that had a black site coordinator or a site coordinator of color, then they might have a more positive experience than the black student or student of color that was in a program that had a white site coordinator. And so I came to that theory because I noticed that like when I would go around to different sites, like it would just be a different experience, which I think, is going to happen because like nobody is the same. Nobody can do the same, nobody can do the same
Mm-hmm.
thing as someone else. So, you kind of already feel like things are gonna vary based upon location. But what I saw, like I just thought that it was something like deeper there. And so knowing that I had one role, but was still passionate about like trying to uncover like how the most marginalized were impacted, I kind of propositioned admin like, hey, I don't mind like still doing the role that I'm in as long as I can do a side project to kind of explore like what is impacting our student experience. And so they were cool with that. And so in that situation, I was able to kind of like use my passion to kind of open up a new role for myself that like benefited the organization as a whole. So while I was still like being the like site coordinator for the site that I ran, I also became a DEI consultant for the office. And so I know these days a lot of folks might hear DEI and think some crazy stuff, just like how the world
It's
has gone.
okay.
But diversity, equity, and inclusion, like, has
Mhm.
always been a passion of mine, right? And so, I was able to kind of like transition into that role, and so in that role, like, I kind of collected data, did some observations to identify like what might be going on, and then I created this like professional development framework to help train the staff on unconscious bias and
Mhm.
unintentional racism. And so that was probably one of like the most positive experiences where I was able to like use my passion in a way that like benefited others, but like also for the greater good. But something that was so interesting about that work too is like while it was valuable for me, I still had a lot of friction in the creation process because while like I had 5 years of teaching under my belt. I was a site coordinator, all of that stuff. I was still one of the youngest staff members on
Yeah.
staff at the time. And so when I propositioned admin, they were cool with me doing it as long as, like one of the like supervisors kind of like watched over me. And
Mm-hmm.
so and so the supervisor that was added to the team, she was in charge of like program evaluation. So it made sense that like she would be the one, but like she had no experience when it came to like racial equity work or just like even race work in general at that time. And so when I was building the course and like building the like assets and things that I was to use, we got into this like very interesting back and forth because she started to question, I guess, like what expertise or like what credentials I had to kind of like
Mm-hmm.
add validity to the course. And I thought that was so interesting because it's like, yeah, you do program evaluation, but you don't know nothing about racial equity work.
Yeah.
So for you to even think that you can question what I got going on over here, I'm going to ask you, why do you feel like you can do that? And if I'm building a course to help people identify how if I'm building a course to help people identify how white supremacy is showing up in their behaviors, you probably need to take some time to identify how those things are impacting you, even viewing me creating
Yeah.
this course anyway, right? And so I thought that was just such an interesting like spot to be in because I'm literally building a course to help train our staff like how to interact with everybody in the most equitable way. And the person tasked with like watching me do this work probably needs to learn from it also. And so I thought that that was interesting because like I was put into like this crossroads where like I'm in the space to like show my passion and like really like give it to the organization, but then also in the same moment having that passion questioned by like those
Yeah.
who were there to like support me.
Well, then, was it really help or was it surveillance?
Listen, okay? Listen. And that is kind of like part of the conversation that like we had got into when I had brought up like, hey, first off, you don't even need to be asking me this because like where like what expertise are you pulling from to even try to like, question anything? And so what I will say that I do think that that moment was a learning lesson for her also because I think
Mm-hmm.
if I wasn't the person to kind of like advocate for myself and say like, well, you need to check yourself also because you were like you're literally doing the things that I'm building in this course to tell people not to do. And so I think that that was also a learning lesson for her. And like since probably like so in that whole creation process, from the time like prior to that conversation to us like having that like headbutt situation, I did notice like her actively trying to like decolonize her mind a bit. But I don't think that that would have happened if like I wouldn't have like advocated for myself to say like you don't even need to be asking me this because what are you talking about?
Right. Okay. No, that makes sense. No, that's pivotal for sure.
Mhm.
All right, all right. All right. I'm gonna move on to another question.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so in what ways can music, art, or storytelling actually spark change in communities or get people thinking differently?
I love this question. It's such a good question. And like it's something that I've been thinking about also, right? Especially like even like when I was a classroom teacher, like you just know like people synthesize information differently. People learn things
Mm-hmm.
differently. People can like gather information in a lot of different ways. And I think especially like in my experience, just like even how I learn and like
Mm-hmm.
teaching black students, like the more creative you can get, the easier it will be for people to like learn whatever lesson you're like trying to teach them, right? So I definitely think that like that music, art, storytelling can definitely be a way to like allow like to like bring people into like topics that they wouldn't even know to think about. And I also think that it's a way to like reach people in a way that they can understand. I think especially today in 2026, where like misinformation is coming out from literally
Yeah.
the like credible sources. You got misinformation coming directly from the White House, right? So
Right.
so people don't really know like what's real, and then added on top of the fact of like an overwhelming amount of the country is functionally illiterate.
Mm.
The way information is presented currently, the masses can't even understand that. But if I put it in a song, if I put it in a poem, if I put it in a great story, people can understand like, oh, that's what's happening. Versus like trying to figure out from all these big words that folks are just mashing together.
Yeah, and that's, meant to confuse people. Like, let me speak over your
Hmm.
head. To your point though, that's what saved me in education.
Yeah.
Music.
Yes.
It helped me with my math and language.
Hmm.
Um, I had a hard time. Sometimes it depends. For one, I was a military brat, so moving in different cities and states and stuff. The curriculum was different, so I was
Mm.
always playing catch up in that way. But what helped me, uh, classical music. You're actually, yeah, you're studying. My native is English, but you're studying different languages, and to
Hmm.
see that this feeling in this piece of music feels the same way each nationality is crazy. So like
Yeah.
that's a I like that. That's a good point you
Yeah.
made,
And
man.
like I think that music is just like so powerful, right? Like I think music is like one of those things that like it can transcend like so many other like barriers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I used to use like music in my classroom all the time. And like even when I'm like learning stuff now, like if I can put it to like a rhyme, I'm definitely gonna get it, right? So I
Yeah.
think I definitely see the like interconnectedness between like arts and intellect and STEM and like all of those things. And I wish that like the overall society kind of like saw the value in the arts more, because I think a lot of like stuff that we're unhappy about now is due to like lack of arts funding. Nobody knows how to be creative no more because we like we're not teaching it.
But creativity brings freedom
Yeah.
because you
And
have to be free. But
mm,
they don't.
exactly.
So to your point, so in DC, at the time, Marion Barry was my mayor. And what
Hmm.
was so cool, let's say, yeah, I went to an arts high school, and what was dope, my first job was learning how to play jazz.
Oh.
And like he had that kind of program, but also like different fundings where it was just like, all right, there's a good bit of people who are behind. Let's, foot funding here where they can get like additional help. Like we at least
Mhm.
I was like on the tail end of that, but they were trying to figure out how to dismantle it and did. And like
Yeah.
to your point, the way that I said it saved my life, it kept me from being a product of my neighborhood.
Mhm.
And I think once they saw, this is just me speaking. I think once they saw the impact of the arts and music, especially
Yeah.
in our community, they was like, "Oh yeah, we need to dismantle this because it's making them think beyond."
That's
So
such a good point. And like I'm over here feeling chills because like I have been thinking on this thought lately, and like you saying that like creativity brings freedom. Like that's so true. And like I've been thinking on this thought lately about like how the like I guess the I guess feeling of getting rid of creativity is so heavy now. And I think well, one, like I've just been thinking a lot that like I think every person here is like born with like something that they're supposed to do, something that they're great at, something that they're
yeah,
supposed to give, something that they're supposed to give to the world, right? But I
hmm,
think that just how our world is structured, most people aren't able to find that because that creativity is squashed for whatever reason, whether like they don't have the money or the like resources to make things happen,
yeah,
or just not exposed to those things. And I think that if we can find a way to still be creative, like that's how we can show resistance in this moment.
Okay, that kind of knocks over that next question about asking about hidden barriers. So there you go. There you go. All right. No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay. So um yeah. So how do you protect your own passion and energy from being drained by institutions or even by people who mean well?
Mm, that's such a good question. And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately too, because I think like just based on like how I am, like I'm always willing to help whoever needs to be helped, especially like if it's somebody that I'm in relationship with, someone that I love, like I'm always like down to help. But I've been saying that like this year I was gonna be like very intentional about like where I direct my energy, just because I know like you just have to be more intentional these days. And so I think for me, how I protect my energy, is just one, try not, I think that the like one thing that like I try to be mindful of is to like not get overwhelmed by the state of the world. I think that it's so easy just to like watch the news or like see what's going on in your like local area and
Mm,
just get and like just get overwhelmed. But like I constantly remind myself that like we as a people, we've seen hard times before and we know how to combat the hard times, and like just reminding myself of like the like greatness that lies within kind of like helps me go forward. But I also have just been intentional about like saying no a lot more lately,
mm,
and like if I need to preserve some
yeah,
energy and I might not be having a good day, that's okay. Like I'm not gonna have no good days every day. And like
right.
sometimes I might just have to say no.
Boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, how has your work in DEI and the arts shown you the ways to identify? No, I'm sorry. Let me start that over. How has your work in DEI and the arts shown you the ways identity, like race, gender, or class, shapes opportunity or access?
Mm, that's such a good question again. And I think um identity shapes so much. And I don't think that people at large understand just like the life that you live has a lot to do with just based on who you are and where you are and like all,
Mm-hmm.
and like everything that like feed into that. But I know for sure, just like even with my work, um that even like me, like right, I'm somebody who went to college. I got a master's. I worked in a school. I worked in a college. I worked in a corporate place. Right, like I have had a different lived experience than like even black folks in my own family, and that's
Mm-hmm.
based upon like some of those identities that I have that have opened up other doors for me. But then when I go into like a corporate space for the first time, and I realize like, oh, when I'm with my family, they might like see me up here because I done did all of these things and been to all of these places. But then I go into this work environment and like it's people talking about stuff that I've never even known about. And like
Mm.
and the reason why I don't know what they're talking about in these conversations about like finances or stocks or land is just because of how, due to my identities, I haven't had access to those types of conversations or even people
Yeah.
who knew about those types of things. And here I am, almost 35, learning about like things that would have made my life better a long time ago. But that's all based upon of just who I am and the people who have the same identities that I have, not even knowing the information themselves. And so
Yeah.
I think that your race, your gender, class, especially, like definitely like holds you back from like different opportunities. And that shapes the life that you have. And people don't really realize that because, we're told that like, oh, everybody treated fairly. Oh, just pull up yourself from your own bootstraps and all of this stuff. And it's like, you don't know, it's so many other factors that go into everything.
That bootstrap thing, I'm so ready to grind that bitch up and throw it in the trash because it's like, it's not a bootstrap thing. It's
Some
you were
people don't even got boots on.
well,
What you mean pulling up bootstraps? They don't even got boots.
them boots was fucking given to them.
Okay.
And then they said that they pulled themselves up from it. So it's kind of like it's a crazy gaslighting. That's
Yes,
really
yes,
what you gaslight me, and that's a way to make me go crazy on somebody. Like don't sit here lie in my face saying that I have
yeah,
equal opportunity and you're denying me something that you just gave to this person and you're telling me, oh, you didn't see that.
yeah.
It's
Like that
yeah.
happens so much, and like I didn't even. So I I will say, when I was in education, I didn't have as many like devious encounters, I
Hmm.
guess,
Yeah,
with like, like folks in the workplace. But corporate just like really feels just like that type of environment where it's like you always watching your back. And like
absolutely.
I honestly feel like that's just because corporate is just a microcosm of like our society. And our society is like a white supremacist culture, and that's gonna
Hmm.
show up in that workplace. And that's why, some people don't really flourish in our spaces because like it's just incongruent with us.
I had to get on down. It wasn't for me.
Okay.
All right. So, if you could teach one lesson from history to young adults today, um, what would help them take action in their communities?
Mm, that's such a good question because it's so many like lessons that like people should know, but we just don't, just for whatever reason. I'm sure we all know the reasons, but like we just don't learn our real history.
Yeah.
Um, I think that the one lesson that like I want um like young like black folks to know, especially, is
Mm-hmm.
that like the state of Black America or the state of the Black diaspora isn't only due to the actions of us, right? I think that so many people think that Black folks are the way they are at large because us as a people, because they don't know the history of like when we did have our own things, when we did have like places flourishing, they literally came in and demolished those places, wiped them out, stopped the progress, right?
Yeah.
And so because of that, I think psychologically, uh, a lot of black folks really internalize these like negative thoughts that they are nothing and they came from nothing and they never built nothing, not knowing everything that we built was demolished because it was a threat to what they had, right? So
Yeah.
I think that if we can switch to psychology to know that we're so powerful that everything that we make is taken away, that can kind of help people figure out like, oh, I don't need to be like down and feeling bad about myself because I know the power that I have. I can just bring it back up and just know that that will be a threat, but so what? Because now I know what to do to kind of combat that.
I do want to say this. I want to add to your point. That's coming from a person who is healthy. And
Hmm.
I'm saying this because from a lived experience, like I was talking to my mentor about this. Um, so I don't know if I ever talked to you about this, but it's not like a huge shocker. Like my history, like growing up, I dealt with like multiple forms of abuse, but
Hmm.
one major one was sexual. So that's like, and it is deeply rooted in our communities too.
Hmm.
It, it doesn't. We're not gonna get into the whole checking the person. It's the experience of the one who was violated, and what it does to the mind.
Yeah.
You sometimes have a hard time really believing that you can make a change and that there is hope because it was just like kind of snuffed out of you so young.
Yeah.
Um, so like I totally 100% agree with what you're saying, but the other hurdle that I'm noticing and for my personal walk is breaking that loop that they have
Yeah.
for them to receive what you're saying.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And and I think that And I think that that's a real thing, right? Because I think that so many of us can experience brokenness through like different situations,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
that does and that does how you I mean sorry, and that does impact how you can show up and be resilient and like try to like
Yeah.
get through tough times for sure. So I hear that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
What are I mean and like you don't got to share like too much from your
No, go
personal if
ahead.
like if
Nah,
you
I'm
don't want to,
cool.
but like but what are some ways that like you kind of like got out of that like psychological rut, if you know
Um,
if that's what we would call it?
Man, it took a very long time. So first, the first step, you start to drown within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know how to get out of something that is actually harming you, but it was more of a thing that you were conditioned to do. So, like, as an adult, I had to make that decision to say, okay, I need to go get some help. You
Yeah.
do have to take some sort of responsibility. Like, yeah, that happened to you, but okay, what are you going to do to try to, help yourself mentally
Yeah.
and emotionally, spiritually? And I was just wanting the noise to like quiet down. So I went to therapy and I spoke about the hard things aloud. Shit that was just killing and eroding everything within me, holding
Yeah.
someone else's secret. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And the
Yeah.
moment I decided to not hold someone else's perversion was the moment I was free.
Mm.
And there was like steps to freedom. And then I started recognizing like I had more self-awareness, like, okay, this person is definitely violating you, but it doesn't mean that you have to go with the violation.
Yeah.
So then you have to kind of teach yourself, like, okay, that's not normal behavior. This is normal behavior because you have been brought up from inappropriate, just inappropriate behavior to the point that you're desensitized. So
Yeah.
I had to do EMDR. I did a lot in that where it's desensitizing me from the horrific memories. And then before
Yeah.
I knew it, talking about it, processing those emotions. I had to learn how to process feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know you remember college, Alex. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I didn't really show much unless I was like hot or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, I had to figure out in a healthy way how to express what I was feeling within. And then once I developed how to process emotions, not to hold someone's secret, that's when
Mm-hmm.
um, a more healthier mindset came into play. And then I started processing other things like I I did not see this person as so and such. I didn't know that they were coming at me like that. It's because
Yeah.
you're already used to that kind of behavior. So once you can
Mm.
realize this is not normal behavior,
Yeah.
then you start to move differently and you're not caught in a loop anymore.
Yeah, and that's so real. And I think like what I'm getting from like what you're saying, and like this is like what I've experienced, and like my own experience too, is that like sometimes it's so easy for us to get stuck in like shame and guilt, and like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that shame and guilt is not even ours, and
Right.
it's still holding us back, and that's so real. And I think that when I say that the like lesson that I want like young black folks to like learn is, like we have been able to to like build things, kind of like goes back to that. It's like don't get too caught up in the shame of guilt that like the world wants you to feel about who you are, or like tell you who you are. Get out of that in order to like kind of like make the steps forward. So I think yeah, that's so real, and I thank you for sharing it too.
Also, it's a bit like you to your point of victim shaming. Um, Anyone that points the finger like you could have done something different based off of
Yeah,
someone else's behavior is way out of pocket and out of order. And I can
yeah,
yell that from the damn rooftop. But
okay,
it took me a minute to realize that. Like,
yeah,
I've had like not to make this, but I've
Yeah.
had situations where I would tell somebody like, "Dang, this happened to me."
Hmm.
Well, how could you let that happen? Or
Like, like,
why
like
didn't
what?
why did you know what I'm saying? You're not
Yeah.
thinking that that person went in hijack and it's triggering like an old feeling. So then you just kind
Hmm.
of you malfunctioning, trying to figure out how to.
Yeah.
And the best way you know how to get out is just to do whatever said thing for that person.
Hmm.
So you feel like, okay, at least I can hurry and get it over with, and but you
Yeah.
have to unlearn that. Like that's
Yeah.
not normal. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
anyway, we gonna move on. um, what's one small but powerful thing people can do this week to reclaim their hope and turn it into collective power?
Mm.
Hmm.
Reclaim their hope and turn it
Yes,
into collective power.
collective
That's
power.
such
Yes.
a good thing because we need that for sure. Um, one thing this week. So I think something that folks can do that like they can like something that's easy for them that they can do to like help reclaim their hope and like turn it into collective power.
Mm-hmm.
Um and this is something that like I did recently at my so this past Saturday I had this event for a part of me. And like
Okay.
one of our activations, I had a station set up to where like if folks wanted to like leave a message for their elected officials that like I would, take their message and like make sure, that that person gets it or whatever. So I think like especially this time with like this being 2026 and a very big like primary year and like just knowing how the future can get, seeing like how things currently are. I think people if like want to like reclaim some power, it's like really like reach out to those in your community, see like what they're working on, see how you can help with that, and then like just
Hmm.
just just like try to get tied in with like community efforts going on. Like I have even been like thinking to myself like I need to get back active in like some of the organizations that I used to be in, especially knowing that like this is the prime time to be like all about the people that you love to ensure that they got what they need.
Okay. Okay. Um, what's one thing schools or workplaces get totally wrong about passion or talent, and how does it end up holding people back?
That is so personally, right?
Uh huh.
I think that especially if like you're working in corporate, like I don't think that those places are like optimized for your own talent, kind of like how
Mm-mm.
we were saying earlier, like that's too much freedom, that's too much of you not being in whatever system that they need you to be in. So I think that really like some of these places do a good job of like making people comfortable of like not going and getting their dreams, right? And so I think that I and like there is this quote that I heard that like some people like the like salary that you get is the like price
Mm-hmm.
that you pay from like living your dreams, right? And so I really think like workplaces for sure get the like whole like value in talent wrong, especially if your talent isn't feeding, like whatever profits they got going on. And I think that schools, especially depending upon like where the school is and like who the school is for, I feel like a lot of schools where like black students go or like students of color go, like they also aren't taught freedom and creativity either. Like we're
Mm-mm.
always force fed down this certain path, and then it's like, what about the kids who want to be artists? What about the girl who want to be a nail tech? What about the boy who want to be a barber? Right?
Yeah.
Like these are great ways that you can make a living too. But for some reason, we always told us a certain path to go down, and that's messing a lot of us up.
You said a valid point, and I don't think I ever really told you like my why and like me dropping out while I was up, in DC
Hmm.
and why I moved to Memphis. It was mainly because I had everyone in my ear telling me what kind of player they want me to be instead of listening to like how I was expressing, how I wanted to dive into my arts. I
Yeah.
didn't want to just be at that time I was studying classical saxophone and I was like, I don't want to do this. Like I've been playing this for a very long time. I really want to dive into production. Oh no, you can't do that. You have to pick one. I said, oh word, bet. All right, then I'm dropping out. So then it
Yeah.
came a point where I was like, well, shit, if I can't do what I really want to do, why am I, you know what I'm saying? Why am I putting myself through
Yeah.
this just to have a piece of paper? Because you want me to go to college? It didn't make sense to me. So I was
Yeah.
like, I would rather sit back and try to figure out like how to reach my dreams. And, I I jumped head first. I went to Memphis because I had the opportunity to be a double major in both audio engineering and saxophone performance.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have both worlds. And like, I just definitely want to say, don't let, because your path is different, don't let someone tell you you can't unless you tried it first. And sometimes you don't get it right the first time. You might have to do it a couple
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
But it's really up to you and what God said in your heart. And like, it's just, I never wanted to live a miserable life and doing what other people want for, like whatever
Yeah.
they saw for me. And it's just, but a lot of people don't have that kind of, like you said, like resilient or in this case, rebellious mindset to be
Yes.
their own
Rebellious
person.
mindset.
Mm-hmm.
and and that is something that is like big for me. I just want people to think in a more rebellious way, even if you don't feel comfortable acting on it, right? Just start.
Yeah.
I want people to be like to start thinking a little more like skeptically about the things that they encounter. Like you should always ask yourself, why is this happening? Why did that person tell me that? What might they be trying to, like get out of the situation? Or like what else could be better than this? What haven't I seen that could actually be a real reality, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's just easy for us to like not go for our dreams because the institutions that we encounter are not built for our dreams.
Man. What you said? What you said? I had to beg her for what he said. No, for real. No, in real life. So to add from there, how do we encourage those young people with rebellious mindsets?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question too. And so something that like has been helping me, like even with that more rebellious mindset, is like I know like this is a phrase that like folks hear all of the time, like like the revolution won't be televised, right? And
Yeah.
so last year when Kendrick had performed it at at the Super Bowl
Mm-hmm.
and had said that the revolution will be televised, like people had this big conversation about like, well, what is he talking about? Like like what does that mean? Or like whatever, right? And like so I
Mm-hmm.
did some research, like I was going back to see and like basically Gil Scott Heron, when he made the track the when the revolution won't be televised, right? That whole message is for people to identify that in order for them to see like what's happening, or in order for them to know that something must change, they have to recognize it in their mind first. It won't be nothing that you see, nothing that like like you watch. You have to see for yourself, like, oh wait a
Yes.
minute, this is wrong. What, like this could be different. This could be better than that, right? And I think that to encourage like young folks who are already like having some of those thoughts, like don't is like one, don't be scared of those thoughts. When you have a thought that like seems contrary to like the ways of the world, I don't want you to be afraid of that, right? Because I think that so many times um a lot of us think that things are the way they are just because, and that they will
Mm-hmm.
always be like that, and that things can never change. And I think that that's the mindset that like folks get stuck into, and they don't want to think differently. right? But if we envision a world where like things need to change and like revolution needs to happen, you're gonna have to think differently. So the thing that I would say, one is don't be afraid of your contrary thoughts. One, and then two, know that nothing is just because. And once you know that nothing is just because, you have to also know that something made it that way. And then once
Mm,
you understand that something made it that way, start to think about then what is that something? Why did that something make it the way that it is? Right?
yeah.
And then I really just think that if you start to uncover why,
Mm-hmm.
and keep asking why, you'll get more comfortable with some of those contrary thoughts because you'll start to see like, oh, that ain't making no sense. But I've been operating like this for so long, right? And then you'll be able to see that the revolution won't be televised and you'll be able to think different.
I also want to add, besides the why, you should also live in a space of what if.
Yeah.
What if? And I was telling my mentor this not too long ago. I used to drive my mama crazy with the what if. Girl, just will be
I
that
love what
there.
if.
But that's been the thing that saved me. Like,
Yeah.
what if someone says, well, then it would be that. And
Yeah.
how I took it, well, then shit. What if it's okay then? Let me go ahead
Yes.
and move in what if because it's gonna be that. And I think
Yeah.
people should take that on too.
Yeah, and that concept of the like what if is something that I think is like something that I talk about as like the art of the possible, right? Like what's possible? All of this stuff is possible, but we
Hmm.
haven't been told that it's possible or haven't even seen that it's possible, and it like limits whatever we think can happen. But I really think that most things are possible if like we just make to work it come true.
Absolutely. Come on. Come on. You preaching.
Yes.
Um, so moving on to the next question. Have you ever seen a system or institution literally take advantage of someone's hope or dedication? And what did that teach you?
I see it every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Like these institutions they take advantage of hope and dedication all of the time. Like that's why. So I seen a tweet
Mm-hmm.
about it was a snowstorm this past weekend and people were still ordering on DoorDash. And one of the DoorDash drivers didn't, I guess, deliver the food because the person didn't leave a tip, even though it was a snowstorm. And so people on Twitter were in this whole back and forth, basically saying that if 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 you're ordering food during a snowstorm, you need to make sure that you tip and da 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 da. So now we have individual people fighting each other when the whole thing could be solved if the corporation just gave their drivers a hazard fee when it was dangerous weather, knowing that people still needed jobs and people still needed food. So when I think about corporations taking advantage of the like hope that people have or like taking advantage of the people that like work for them, instead of corporations creating infrastructure to help their employees work through the conditions that they have to work through, they
Mm-hmm.
would they would create a situation to where now you have everyday people who are meant to be in community with one another arguing over tips when we should be arguing that the corporations are not paying what they need to pay. And so
Yeah.
and so instead of focusing on the actual player that is causing the most harm, now you got us going back and forth. And the thing is, the corporations are still getting off scot free, taking advantage of everybody because not only are the fees higher on DoorDash, they still not giving the drivers the fees. So now, as a customer, I got to pay $40 for one burger, and the driver is still not getting anything. And now we're all fighting. So when I think about corporations taking advantage of their people, I think that it happens just so often that like we don't even realize. And I know in my experience, I've had to like leave a couple of like workplaces in the past because I felt taken advantage
Advantage
of.
of. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Same. Man, you said so many things. I'm trying to focus the thought. It was a lot of great nuggets in there. Okay, I'm gonna just keep going because I feel like this question will spark more conversation.
Mhm.
So if you could completely redesign how education, work, or creative spaces reward people, what's the first thing you change?
Wait, can you say that one more time?
If you could completely redesign how education, work, or creative spaces reward people, what's the first thing you would change?
Mm. And like this is so interesting because I think that we need to be rewarded in so many different ways because we haven't been rewarded in a lot of different ways yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I always think that like people need to be paid what they're worth, especially knowing that the capitalist society that we live in or whatever. But I think that ultimately, especially now where it seems like the like I have been having this thought lately that like we are living in the era of the death of the expert. So we're like nobody is an expert on the things that they are, I guess, like bringing to the world anymore. People are just doing things without the education that they might need, without the experience that like might really like help them help people. And I
Yeah.
think that and I think that if schools, workplaces, and institutions like really get back to one, um I guess valuing actual, and like I don't know how to say this correctly, but like
Mm-hmm.
I want us to like get to a place to where everybody has equitable access to the things that they need versus just being picked because of who you might know or the race you might have or the gender you might be, right? I think in a lot of schools and a lot of institutions, how you're treated is shaped by some of those things. And if we start to focus on the actual like quality, and like this sounds like so like I don't know, but it sounds like so e- elementary to me. But like if if we stop focusing on, I guess
The
like
distractions.
yes, like
Mm-hmm.
if we just get rid of all of those things and like focus on like the actual core of like what's happening and like who someone is and like what value they actually bring, then I think that we could start to see like a resurgence of the like great art movements that we've seen in the past. But I think now the like landscape is so oversaturated because like either somebody has like bought their way into a space
Mm-hmm.
or somebody just has more access based on what they have.
So based off of what you're saying, well, for me, this is how it read. Like they're exploiting desperation.
Yes.
Um, and like that control wealth. Uh, I recently went down a rabbit hole just thinking I was reverse engineering what you're saying, and
Mm,
it was just interesting to see that we're stuck in an empire like mindset. So
yeah.
it's going to be not saying that you can't break it, but it's broken into three parts. So you have the people that's running the empire. Then you have the ones that you're saying that are playing into the game, being selective, and what that wealth, like where it's reaching. And then you have the other group of people that's in desperation.
Hmm.
But between those two groups, you know, they're distracted with each other, the dollar being that focal point,
Yep.
and we're not paying attention to the fact that the people that is running the whole show, so yeah, I'm with you. I'm with
Yeah.
you on that. It is fun. It is very like, hey, this is base, but you have to teach people what healthy relationships are in order for
Yeah.
them to actually recognize the game that's being played on us as a
Yeah.
collective.
Yeah,
So,
because listen, everybody getting played, and we just
hmm
fighting each other, and it's like you're not fighting the right player.
you right. Okay. So, who's an unsung hero from history? Someone who resisted or built alternatives that you wish everyone knew about?
Hmm.
It could be top five because it looked like you picking through a lot.
Yeah, I know it's so many because that's a great question, but it's like resisted or build alternatives. Um, so something that I think is so interesting is that when I hear questions like this about like unsung heroes, it's like one person always comes to mind, and I think this person comes to mind because it was a big part of my like classroom teaching days.
hmm
So I know that when we hear like I think like most people when they hear about the Montgomery bus boycott that they only think about Rosa Parks, right?
Yeah.
And so when I think about unsung heroes and just like think about the like person I am and like what's important to me, I think that one of the unsung heroes that I think that resisted that like didn't get the value that they probably could have gotten was this woman named Claudette Colvin. And so Claudette Colvin was actually the first black woman to like be in the Rosa Parks like situation while on the bus. But the powers that be, who was in control of the civil rights movement at the time, didn't think that Claudette Colvin was a valuable representative of the cause because she was a teenager and she was pregnant. And so
Mm.
seeing how respectability politics kind of like impacted just like her role in the civil rights movement always made me want to like share her story just because I know that a lot of like what holds the black community back is still tied to respectability politics. And I really think that if a lot of us weren't told to act in a certain way to get to a place that even if acting a certain way isn't going to let us get to, then we could have like greater movement as a community. And so when I think about unsung heroes and like people who still resisted despite I guess like not being the like chosen one, I always think about Claudette Colvin because like her case did really start the like movement of that whole civil rights Montgomery bus boycott situation. But we just don't really hear about her because of her image wouldn't have been good for the movement at that time.
It's just so interesting how selective we are and what looks good and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And like,
Hmm.
you
But like
know,
that, but like that still happens today all the time.
yeah,
Like even like with that whole like quarter zip trend that like just was going down where like people said like, oh well, I'm gonna put on a quarter zip sweater and not a Nike Tech sweatsuit. And it's like you could put on a 3-piece suit and they will still hold you down and stick the dogs on
yeah. No, for real. For real. And I think that came from how like we're policed.
you. Hmm.
Like the whole thing. I mean, think about the Crown Act.
Yeah.
We're not sitting here
Yeah.
policing what your hair look like.
Literally, like people like we have to have a
Yeah,
law to go to work
that's
with the
crazy.
hair that grows out of our that is really insane. That is insane to me. Like that makes no sense. And people just walking around like everything is
It's
everything.
okay. Yeah, no, it's just so like my mind just went into a. But we gonna stay focused. But yeah, no, it's crazy. Okay, so all right. Oh, is this my last question? Dang. Um. Okay. Do you think hustle culture is just modern day exploitation, or can it actually work in someone's favor? Why?
I think hustle culture is definitely the palatable, I guess, like version of like we need the most labor out of you to make the most money, which I think is white supremacy, right? I think
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing to say that you want to work, that you are ambitious, that
Mm-hmm.
you have goals. Those are not bad things. Those are great qualities, right? But I think that the like culture of like hustle culture, no days off, the grind never stops, right? What
Yeah.
that says, like what that says to people is that the only value that you bring to the world is that the like labor that is extracted
Mm-hmm.
out of you. And if you aren't grinding every day, and if you do take days off, then you're not as valuable. And I think that that's very dangerous, especially considering that like it's an extension of white supremacy and capitalism. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think, yes, have all of the goals that you want, have all of those things too. But I think that if we're messaging to the world that the only way to have those things is to work yourself into the ground, we're not doing anybody a benefit with it.
I had to unlearn that for myself. I had to learn how to say no. I had to learn that productivity is not a true representation of me.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, here's another leaf that, another turn that you could kind of think from. I also use working like a dog to run from pain too.
Yeah.
So I think
It,
it's a
it,
combination of what you're saying, and I can at least hide behind my work so I can run away. Like my focus is on something else. So I'm gonna allow you to
yeah.
work me like a dog. So I guess it goes back to like what we were saying earlier, it being a mental thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, wow, identifying the root. Okay. Dang, this
Yeah.
was this was killing. For one, I thank you so much for coming on the Purple Mic Podcast, Music and Civics. Parish
Thank you for
with the
having me.
Pardon Me TV. I think that's his QR code in that corner. So I want y'all to, for one, like and subscribe to my boy, and then also like and subscribe to Purple Mic. Okay. Now,
Period.
what's also cool about these episodes, we also have like playlists that are attached
Mhm.
to each episode to connect you to music and really truly sit with the questions in our conversations and like putting it all together to make you take a second look at yourself and what you're participating on a daily, you know?
Mhm.
But anyway, like again, well, like what I said, thank you for coming on to the Purple Mic podcast, and I hope that I can interview you again in the future. Um, yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything for the people before we end this thing?
First I want to say thank you to Purple Mike. Thank you for having me. This was a great conversation. And listen, you can interview me anytime. If I need to even come in person, I might have to book a flight.
Oh, come on
So
now.
okay. This was a great conversation. So definitely shout out to the Purple Mike family. Follow that. Well, not follow, but you can go ahead and scan that QR code and like follow me at other places.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you.